my top 10 most complimented fresh fragrances for men of all time. Now, as always, I just want to preface this by saying, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who sort of fell in love with fragrance almost 6 years ago, and went down the rabbit hole of the niche on YouTube, Instagram, forums, whatever you name it, and just sort of had to go through those who weren't being the most honest and were just trying to get a little bit of money, fill their pockets a little bit, just trying to get some commission off of selling fragrances, whatever. And then also those of you who are on here that really do give your honest opinion on forums or YouTube or whatever, and sort of, now after having 5 or 6 years of experience with these fragrances and all my fragrances, I know what's true in a more objective perspective now, and sort of what works and what's actually complimented or not, So also these fragrances, all of them have garnered me a lot of compliments in general, but I will be ordering them in the least complimented out of the bunch to the most complimented. But even the least complimented have garnered their a solid amount of compliments, Now the first one is going to be Neroli Portofino from Tom Ford. Now this one, it's got to be one of my favorites from Tom Ford's private blend, at least. It's just very, it's not one of the most popular Tom Fords. It is pretty popular within their, some sort of summer spring fragrances, those warmer weather sort of fragrances. This one kind of comes up more often. But this one, the amount of oranges and orange bitters, and in combination with like these tiny amounts of florals, and I think that neroli as well, it's just so good. And it genuinely reminds me of walking the boardwalks of like Santa Cruz and stuff where I grew up. It really throws me back. So maybe there's this nostalgic thing behind it for me. But honestly, it has garnered me compliments. The projection is pretty solid, and the longevity is as well. But the amount of compliments that I've garnered from this one, I won't lie to you guys, it wouldn't be a mass appealing sort of fragrance, but it is very easy to wear. Now the next one is going to be Dolce & Gabbana's Light Blue Intense Pour Homme. Now this one throws me back as well, because this was one of the first fragrances that I got, like after starting this journey. I had some fragrances back in high school or whatever, but this one, yeah, this one is fantastic. Now this one also, I won't lie, it doesn't really get that title of mass appealing either. It has this very nice, fresh, salty, sort of like brackish marine sort of fragrance in there with the citruses. And I think maybe it's that salt that might be throwing a small amount of people off and not making it as mass appealing, but it's still just so nice and easy to wear and pleasing as well. And the longevity and projection of this is very solid as well, I might add. Now this next one might seem a little sus because I don't physically have it, but it's going to be a Bleu de Chanel, the Eau de Toilette version of Bleu de Chanel. Now the Eau de Parfum and the Parfum version, they're great and all, but they're just not for me. And the Eau de Toilette just is hands down the best out of all of them, in my opinion, truly. And I find it to be the most mass appealing as well. Now the Eau de Parfum and Parfum, they lean more into those woods, and they seem a bit more appropriate for the winter, fall, or the colder weather sort of thing. So I would sort of lean to choosing those around that time if you were going to opt for those. But the Eau de Toilette, summer, spring, all year round, very versatile, very blue, very clean and fresh. And those citruses don't really give off the most designer of vibes, which is really nice. Now, the only thing with Bleu de Chanel is that because of its popularity, now I wouldn't say it has that same social saturation as like Dior Sauvage does, but it's still very popular. And when I was working in niche and luxury fragrance, we still had designer fragrances like Bleu de Chanel. And I sold my fair share of them to, sort of like middle-aged men, guys my age. And then also, though, there was a fair amount of kids that were in like middle school, high school, not there by themselves, but usually a parent that was there to buy Bleu de Chanel for their kid in middle school or for their boy in high school sort of thing. So I would say, it's got this very vast and broad audience for it. So I'll just sort of keep that in mind depending on what sort of setting you're opting to wear that in. Now the next one is going to be Xerjoff's Casamorati Mephisto. Now this one, a ton of you guys in the comments were recommending this, especially when I was bringing up Silver Mountain water in my past videos and saying that this one is a very good sort of alternative that shares a lot of similarities to Silver Mountain water, especially when I was talking about like Silver Mountain water dupes and stuff, things of that nature in the past. And this one is so good. And I'm so glad I trusted you guys. This one is a very like classy citrus, very fresh and airy, like, oh man, it's layered with those florals as well. I believe it's like a rose, an iris, and a lavender, if I'm not mistaken, but they aren't too heavy. You know, they're definitely there. They're definitely layered within that citrus, but I just think it makes it a bit more classy and makes it more mass appealing because it's more unisex. And usually that's what seems to pan out to be a lot more mass appealing and especially appealing to the feminine nose. Now it's funny, this thing has sort of the same concept of like, not scent profile or fragrance wise, but has the same concept of like, Original Santal from Creed. It's the fact that when I was selling, when I was working for Creed and whenever I would show Original Santal, if it was a man, it was like 60 or 70% of the time, the guy would be like, oh man, like this smells good, but you know, I think it just leans a bit more feminine sort of thing, you know? Or on the flip side, women would be like, oh, you know, this smells really good, but I would picture this sort of more on like a man or like my man sort of thing. And that's what it seems like a lot of people have said about Mephisto as well. I think it's very unisex, very balanced, maybe even a bit more masculine. I don't know. I think it really just would take its way with whoever's wearing it, genuinely, whoever's presenting it on themselves. I really think that matters with this one. I think that matters with the majority of fragrances, maybe even some more masculine or feminine leaning fragrances, even if it was on, you know, the opposite gender sort of thing. I think you can really pull it off depending on who you are and who's wearing it, you know? Now the longevity and projection of this one is very, very solid. I mean, especially in comparison to Silver Mountain water, it's really there. And the scent profile, though, with this and Silver Mountain water, you know, I can see how those similarities and sort of comparisons are being drawn between the two. When I smelled it though, I guess I was just expecting it to be more into that Silver Mountain water vibe. It's very ozonic and very fresh and clean, but it leans a lot more into those citruses, you know. Silver Mountain water really orients itself around that green tea note in my mind. But this one leans more into those citruses and doesn't have that green tea accord. But genuinely, this one is amazing, seriously. Now these next two are going to seem a little sus as well because I don't have them, but you gotta trust me. The next one is going to be Gentle Fluidity Silver from MFK. Now this one is just, it's probably the cleanest metallic fragrance that I've ever gotten my nose on. It's just very clean, very fresh, very straightforward, metallic sort of thing. Very grown as well. Not mature in like an age sort of sense, but more in like a social aspect. Very mature, very grown, very sophisticated, man. I would find that one to be very mass appealing as well, especially when I was working in niche fragrance. That one was very, very easy to like whenever I showed it, especially, I was gonna say especially to men, but the compliment factor was very well balanced between men and women. And the longevity and projection is what you would expect from an MFK sort of fragrance. You know, it's very, very good, very strong, and the longevity is awesome. I've worn it for myself. I've worn a lot of MFKs for myself in my time working there, and they're all amazing. And this one performs just as great. And the price point on that one is very good for an MFK as well. Now the next one, which is the only other one that I don't physically have, is going to be from Parfums de Marly, and it is Percival. Now Percival was hands down not only my most sold Parfums de Marly fragrance, but I'm pretty sure just in general, it's gotta be the most sold Parfums de Marly fragrance, especially for men. Now it definitely leans more into, you know, that summer, spring, sort of warm weather sort of vibes. But it's just very, very versatile, man. Seriously, I mean, you can wear it all year round. It's very fresh, very blue. It's a much more dressed up, fresh, mature blue fragrance, you know? I mean, I think the younger audience can wear it as well. But I just mean dressed up in the sense of like, it doesn't smell designer, right? It's not gonna smell like your basic blue sort of fragrance like YSL or anything like that. It's just gonna be a lot more niche and luxury. Now, like I said, it is a much more fresh fragrance, but like 90% of other fresh fragrances, you can wear them all year round. And I think Percival is even more appropriate for an all year round because it has those citruses, but it's still mixed with those like woodsy, sort of ambery accords as well. So it makes it just even more perfect all year round. Now that one is super mass appealing, probably the most mass appealing from Parfums de Marly, other than like, I mean, Carlisle is probably another great one, but that one's not like a fresh fragrance, you know? And that one definitely leans more long lasting and is very great with the projection as well, very solid. Now this next one, I know most of you that are returning here are going to be tired of me saying it, but this next one is going to be Creed's Aventus Cologne DNA. So not Creed Aventus, and not just Aventus Cologne at all. No, Aventus Cologne is great, but the DNA itself, right? Because we know Creed has its longevity and projection issues, you know, so many people have talked about the reformulations and stuff like that as well. And I heard about it so much firsthand when I was working for Creed specifically, but there are so many fantastic dupes out there and clones. Personally, I use Club de Nuit Intense Man from Armaf, and this one, it's so on the nose with Aventus, but leans just a bit more into those citruses and away from that smokiness on the bottom to be almost more like Aventus Cologne. And I'm telling you, Aventus Cologne deserves the hype that Aventus has gotten over all the years, especially all the hype that Aventus got in like the OG days of fragrance YouTube sort of thing. And the thing is, women truly don't like Aventus, man. Aventus Cologne though, that's a completely different story. When I was selling Creed, Aventus never got love from women. I mean, there was an occasion here or there, right? But I always tell the story. If a couple came up and the man came up and he was like, yeah, like I want to smell Aventus, I've heard so much about it. Of course, yes, it's legendary and it's so renowned, everything, you know? So they would smell it, they would get their nose on it, and the man would be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, sort of thing. And then the woman would smell it and she'd be like, what are you talking? Like, she'd be so perplexed over how amazed he was by it. And then I would usually pick up Aventus Cologne or Silver Mountain Water, and she would fall in love with both of those usually, right? And so much more over that. And they would always say, you're not getting this, you're getting that one. So for that one, it's going to be the Creed Aventus Cologne DNA or something like a dupe like Club de Nuit Intense Man from Armaf. Now this next one is a newer one, to me at least. It's going to be Pacific Rock Moss from Goldfield and Banks. Now this one has truly hypnotized me. I mean, it's really done something to me. After I got my nose on it and after I started wearing it especially, it's just got this very light, airy, flowy, like windy sort of thing to it, like those citruses. I think it's the first description and scenario that came to me was like cruise ship vibes. And I mean, I haven't been on a cruise ship in like my memorable life sort of thing, you know? So I don't know where I was getting that, but I think it's just that, not oceanic per se, especially not in like a salty sense, but it does give like those sort of aquatic vibes without that saltiness. But it's like this breeze blowing in your face while you're on like on a cruise ship or like on a boat and you're right next to the shore. I really think it's that coastal moss that they put in here, especially mixed in combination with that lemon that they use. I think it's just, oh man, yeah, just very light, airy, flowy, mass appealing, just very easy to wear. I mean, I could get lost in like for an eternity with this one. I mean, the longevity and projection, like I said, it's very light and so airy and acceptable. So the longevity and projection, it's probably gonna be on the wrong side of solid, but it's nothing that Overspring hasn't gotten me past. Now, Pacific Rock Moss has to be one of the most mass appealing from Goldfield and Banks in general, as far as I'm aware. But seriously, I am so impressed by this. I'm in love, genuinely. Pacific Rock Moss from Goldfield and Banks. Now, number 2 is going to be Silver Mountain Water from Creed. Now, this one is another one that I would love to say the Silver Mountain Water DNA. I haven't been able to find anything that really replicates that DNA as well as Silver Mountain Water, or anybody that can vouch for it, that's very reputable, you know. I've gotten, for myself, I've gotten Mephisto, of course, I talked about that, and it just shares its similarities, but is not a clone or dupe or anything that can sort of, I mean, I guess it could replace it, you know, but on terms of like that that compliment factor, especially from women, you know, towards the feminine nose, it is so appealing, and that green tea note is just so different. It doesn't have those hard-hitting citruses in here. It's just the longevity and projection that really, really disappoints me and a lot of other people, you know. I'll even spray it on my clothes because I know my skin doesn't project the best. It actually projects on the weaker side. So I'll usually spray stuff on my clothes, especially if it's a transparent fragrance. And this one, it just disappoints me every time. I mean, it's not awful, but it's awful compared to the price point that you're gonna pay for a Creed. Now, Offnon Supremacy in Heaven is another one that a lot of people recommended to me as a dupe or clone of Silver Mountain Water. I can't lie though, I just don't see it, man. When I first smelled it, when I first got it in, I smelled it expecting like Club de Nuit sort of vibes. And I was like, their ability to replicate popular fragrance, and this just didn't do it, right? Now I know there's a lot of people that have recommended Club de Nuit Sillage to me, right? I believe it's this in like a white and blue bottle, or like silver and blue bottle sort of thing. I've just heard so many mixed opinions and bad opinions on Sillage though. Like that is very headache inducing, very, very loud, and just too piercing sort of thing. And that people can see how the fragrance is going for that as like a dupe or clone, but that is just too much. And other than that, this was like the other one that a lot of people were recommending that I thought was gonna be a bit more reputable. But for me, it's just very synthetic, very designer. There's this nostalgic thing because it reminds me of a couple fragrances that I had back in high school, I can't lie. But it's just not it, not for me, not for me. I'm not gonna be wearing it, I don't think. It's a beautiful bottle though, I can't lie. The presentation on this one is so cool. But Silver Mountain Water, I always say it, it's the magnum opus, in my opinion, of Creed when it comes to the feminine gaze, the feminine nose, you know? Very fresh, very clean, very ozonic, very airy, but like in this pure, fresh air sort of way. This has to be the #1 Creed on terms of compliments, next to like Aventus Cologne. Now for #1, we've got Roja Elysium. Now Roja Elysium, as some of you may know, and as you can obviously tell, well, not really. I just got this one in because beforehand I had worn Elysium, but I just gone through several small decants of it and had gotten compliments on it just from the decants, right? Also, the projection and longevity on this one, I had heard several not great things about it. To me though, it's beyond solid. Even with the small decants that I had that were just like sprayed, or sorry, I think they were pre-made small decants, but were just sprayed into like a sample bottle by itself. This lasts a lot longer than what people make it seem like. I swear I'm smelling it, maybe not on myself, but I think it's just rubbing on like my bed sheets and like my pillowcase, just from like the back of my neck or hair or whatever. And I'm smelling it into the next morning and then into the next night of getting back into bed. So I don't know if they've like reformulated recently or anything like that. It smells the same as I remember it, but the longevity and projection is beyond solid, like I said. And the fragrance itself is so mass appealing, especially to the feminine nose, I would say, but I find it to be pretty balanced in general. It's just got like this freshly squeezed grapefruit citrus on top. And I find like the fragrance itself really orients itself around that as well. It's not just the top note, but it really settles into that grapefruit as well. And that grapefruit is really distinct. It's really like piquant, like it really, really is distinctive. Now after getting Pacific Rock Moss in, I was sort of putting them like toe to toe in terms of not comparison, but more like similarities, and like comparing them between each other, because I really, really adore Pacific Rock Moss. Between smelling the two, if I would spray Pacific Rock Moss on my left arm and Elysium on my right arm, if I ever went into smelling the Elysium first and then the Pacific Rock Moss, I really couldn't make it out, because they do share that citrus similarity and freshness sort of thing. And this one is just so much more distinctive and a little quite stronger. So when I would go into smelling my left arm afterwards, I really couldn't make it out. And through the general opinions that I've heard, Elysium does seem to be quite more mass appealing. Anyways, I hope this was valuable for you guys. If you like fragrance and that sort of thing, make sure to subscribe if you'd like, hit that bell notification, drop a like, and drop a comment if you have any questions or just want to comment, you know. I'll also leave my Instagram in the description if you ever want to reach out on there or ask me any questions about fragrance. You can feel free to do so. But other than that, hope you guys have a good one. God bless.